This is an extract from the Leader podcast by the Evening Standard. The whole thing is available on all major podcast providers.
The ayes to the right, 261. The noes to the left, 322. So the noes have it. The noes have it.
The moment footballer Marcus Rashford's bid to extend free school meals through the holidays to Easter was defeated in the Commons. Opposition figures have labelled the outcome disgusting, with many accusing the government of not caring that more than 1.4 million could now go hungry. Our editorial column says there's still time to rethink the decision.
Marcus Rashford has warned that children will go hungry and that their welfare should be a matter beyond party politics. We share his disappointment and wish that MPs had voted in support of the proposal. The reality is that measures to address immediate suffering are needed now, with the effects of the pandemic still bearing down heavily on many. The government's argument that the situation is different today from the summer because schools are back doesn't mean that there aren't still families who need help. There's still time for the government to think again over free Christmas break meals, and it should.
Not-for-profit School Food Matters is among the groups calling for the government to address the issue as a genuine need. Boss Stephanie Slater joins me. Stephanie, what was your reaction after the Commons vote on Wednesday night?
We were aware that the government U-turned the last two times that they said they wouldn't fund holiday provision during these really, really difficult times. So I'm innately optimistic, so I kind of thought we might be able to reason to celebrate last night, but it was not meant to be. It's very hard, obviously, with a Conservative majority. The defeat was 261 to 322, so it wasn't vastly out of kilter, and we did have some Tory MPs vote for the motion. But obviously, half term, schools break up on Friday, and we know there's going to be an enormous amount of children who are really going to feel the pinch during the half term holiday, and then we have to face Christmas. So I'm massively disappointed. Government, in their response, obviously is talking about food not being the responsibility of schools during the holidays and talking about in normal times we don't fund free school meals during the school holidays. But gosh, this is not a normal time. We are seeing such levels of poverty and families newly needing some help. If you look at the increase in the number of families applying for universal credit, it's massive, and it's the highest level since 2009. And we've got 5.6 million people on universal credit. So that you can't argue with the figures. And we've got the Trussell Trust telling us that they're predicting a 61% increase in the need for food parcels over the Christmas period. So this isn't a problem that's going to go away just because furlough is ended. It's going to be much more acute. So we're really disappointed, but we will continue banging the drum and hopefully government will see reason.
You touched on it briefly. Who is this going to impact the most?
Thinking in terms of London, during school closures and all the way through the summer holidays, School Food Matters with Guy's and St Thomas's charity supported families in Lambeth and Southwark with breakfast. So that government stepped up to supply food vouchers for children entitled to free school meals. Well, what we noticed is that a lot of the breakfast provision that was happening before coronavirus halted, and that left a lot of children hungry in the mornings, too hungry to learn. And we wanted to address that problem. So with our partners at Guy's, we put together a program called Breakfast Boxes. And by the end of the summer holidays, after the 18 weeks, we had supplied 500,000 breakfasts in just 2 London boroughs. The reason I'm telling you this is because we asked schools to identify which families were in need of support. And what we found is this went far beyond free school meal entitlement. This included a cohort of families with no recourse to public funds. So where do these families go? They go to their school. And despite the fact that government is telling us that schools aren't responsible, families will go to their schools because they're trusted, safe places for them to go, and they're asking for help. There are so many hurdles. The first hurdle, obviously, is this half-term break, which is troubling us. But then Christmas is a 2-week break, and that's an enormous gap for families who are needing support to feed their families well.
The government's put forward the argument that the situation is different today from the summer because schools are back. What do you make of this?
The response to the summer holiday feeding programme was because we were right in the middle of a COVID crisis. That's why government responded, and quite rightly. They listened to the arguments from campaigners, they listened to all the data from food banks, and they heard the stories from the schools. But what has changed? Schools are back, but children will not be in school during the school holidays, and hunger doesn't understand term times. These families need support, and we know categorically that many of the families this affects, their children have one hot meal a day, and that is their free school meal. So I don't buy that argument because we are still in the middle of the COVID crisis. And you know what? We want to see an extension of holiday provision full stop. Let's forget about the COVID crisis. The problem was bad enough before coronavirus. So you will have seen the National Food Strategy, Part 1. It was brought out in a hurry because of as a COVID response. And the first two recommendations that we're absolutely getting behind are an extension in entitlement to free school meals so that every family on universal credit, their children get a free school meal, but also an extension to the holiday programme so that every child eligible for free school meal gets support during the holidays.
You mentioned you're going to continue putting pressure on the government. Going forward, what does this mean?
Charities working in this space, and that's from Save the Children to the Trussell Trust to School Food Matters and beyond. We've formed a consortium of campaigners, and we're working together because obviously we can make a great big noise if we all join forces here. And we will continue lobbying government and supporting Marcus Rashford's campaign, his very public campaign and his parliament petition, to just push the cases and to get the voices of schools and children and families to government so they can understand that this is a genuine need and it is a unique need and it needs addressing. But School Food Matters itself, well, we'll just carry on doing the projects that we do. And we've just received some funding so that we continue with our breakfast boxes programme for Christmas, for the 2-week Christmas holiday, and for February half term, because we know that as soon as we finish that programme in Lambeth and Southwark, the first question that schools had for us was, what happens next? The problem hasn't gone away. So what happens to breakfast when, at the end of the summer holidays?